long, charities weaponize the most vulnerable and darkest moments and suffering in an attempt to get a quick, impulsive $5 tax donation. We say on side propositions that the model that charities use for advertising in the status quo is morally bankrupt and counterproductive in helping those who need it most. It is on that basis we're very proud of it. I'm going to talk about two constructive arguments. First, why you get less donations and support with graphic imagery, and second of all, why you get the worst allocation of funds. Before that, I want to talk about our model that stands for side proposition. We do not support this kind of graphic imagery, and we support a variety of different means through which charities can advertise. Those include not only using statistics and logic, but also catering to the different kinds of actors and audiences that they may reach. So when they're trying to get institutional aid from governments and NGOs, we think using statistics can be incredibly effective. But when you're appealing to the public, then using a combination of factors like the success of that institution and the efforts that they've made in the status quo can be also incredibly effective in conjunction with statistics. We think a really good model for what proposition supports is the Meet a Week Foundation, which uses a combination of images and stories to highlight individual people and how we can help them. So for example, donate to Tabitha and she can go to school together. We think a lot of that kind of imagery is incredibly important on our side and will prove why it's better for charities in the long run. So now with the model done, on to the first constructive argument about why you get less donation support with graphic imagery. The first thing we want to prove is that people just do not respond positively to graphic imagery, and there's a variety of different ways in which they act. We think the majority of the reactions to graphic imagery is immense disgust. For opposition to provoke a reaction about most issues that people generally know about, they have to probably use quite extreme graphic imagery. These things are deeply reprehensible to most people, especially when ads are embedded into the normalities of life. When you're going to work and on the subway, you see a deeply unsettling photo of a mutilated, bloody animal. The instinct for individuals is not empathy, as opposition may try to say, but rather to look away, to be unsettled, and be more disgusted than empathetic. This is crucial because of the cognitive bias that we all have. The reason why we're more likely to be disgusted than empathetic is because it aligns with what we previously already associated to be disgusting. So things like blood, guts, and violence shown through the media, etc., which we all associate with things of negativity and that we don't like. We think it is very unlikely to be an empathetic response, given empathy is often based around lived experiences and being able to relate to that. It is often difficult to even conceptualize of that world, especially because the kinds of graphic imagery make their lives seem so drastic from our conception of the world, which means it's very difficult to get that kind of empathetic response. We think in addition to this response, a lot of other people may believe that over time, the bombardment of these advertisements leads to a feeling of hopelessness, that the issue is absolutely intractable, that the weight of it means that we shut down. This is logically intuitive, given that most of the time when we're faced with a big problem or big threat, our reaction is not to respond, but rather to shut down because we feel like we can't do anything about it, especially as an individual. Our side addresses a lot of those issues, most over because we are able to show the progress of the charity, showing the positive outcomes that they've been able to have. So it is less of that feeling of hopelessness and disgust that we see when we see a graphic, bloody animal. We think finally, though, a lot of people's responses, in addition, may be over time, along with exposure to a lot of these issues, means we're desensitized to them. The fact is, when you go to the subway station and it is littered with advertisements of all kinds of different disgusting graphic images, that's when we begin to associate these things as normal and daily reoccurrences. That's when we're less likely to get the urgency that we need to address those issues, when we believe that that is commonplace, when we begin to believe that blood and all those different things are normality. The outcome is that we're far less likely to get donations and the kind of empathy that is necessary for charity work. But where our side of the house, the counterfactual is that seeing positive outcomes makes us hopeful and want to contribute. Seeing the story of Tabitha, that was a girl who was able to go to school and able to get drinking water because of your donation, makes you a lot more positively impacted and want to actually feel good emotions as opposed to the negativity of graphic images. We think even if opposition can prove that they get donations on their side of the house, the kinds of model that they get is very unsustainable, because it is dependent on a one-time feeling of pain or disgust or guilt that prompts you to have that one-time $5 tax donation. That's very problematic because you get less accountability for charities at the point when their model is based on a lot of quick donations from people who just happen to see those images. A very good example of that is that of the Red Cross, which is an institution that is incredibly corrupt and has been built on millions of $5 donations, compared to our side of the house, when we have positive impact and we show the progression of charity efforts. We're far more likely to get the kinds of people giving donations that are recurring donations or long-term donations that made it more likely that people pay attention to what the charity is doing and keep them more in check. So we think it is very unlikely you get more donations on their side of the house, and the wrong kinds of donations and unsustainable source of funding for these institutions.
Question. Given that the use of graphic images increased the number of donations after the Haiti earthquake by 40%, how do you propose that charities get this money on your side of the house?
Okay, just using an example doesn't necessarily prove why it's going to be the case that you get more funding. In fact, we think people are quite sympathetic to the Haiti earthquake and would probably have donated on either side of the house because people feel sympathy. You don't need to show someone's head or bloody fingers after the earthquake to make people want to help others, given that we've proven to you the positive impact of your donation are likely going to be more receptive to getting that donation. So the second argument now about why you get worse allocation of funding. We're taking opposition at their best. We say that even if we concede that a minority of people do respond to these advertisements and donate, why that's incredibly harmful for charities and their issues. First of all, we think you get donations to the wrong kinds of charities. Their response to graphic imagery is necessarily irrational because when humans process images and graphic imagery, that triggers a part of your brain that deals with emotion, not logic. This is incredibly problematic because it fuels impulsive text donations, quickly donating as opposed to actually considering the charity's efficacy, not actually considering the broader implications of your donation. This is incredibly harmful because people have limited funds for giving to charity. A lot of people have a limit how much they're willing to donate and be generous to other individuals, especially given that we have other priorities within our lives and charity is not always the main dominant. We think that the fact that the Red Cross and other corrupt institutions can manipulate that irrationality means we get more likely to fund bad charities and charities that use our money in problematic ways. On our side of the house, we get more rational consideration of the kinds of charities we donate to at the point when we're considering the progress that they're making and their credibility and authority on these issues as opposed to which image that they can use, which is politeness. We think better charities prevail on our side of the house. But second of all, you focus on the wrong issues on their side of the house. Social norms dictate to us what is acceptable to be graphic. There are huge implications to this because some charities are better able to access and use graphic images than others to the detriment of most important issues. So things like female genital mutilation and periods and menstrual hygiene are just not palatable to most people and can't be used to the same extent with graphic imagery. Most important issues are often ignored because their sympathy through imagery is not as potent, whereas you disproportionately prioritize other issues on their side of the house. A really good example of this are toads are really important for the ecosystem, but nobody cares about them because that graphic nature is not sympathetic compared to a panda, who in the status quo is already being incredibly protected. Ours is better because we are less likely going to get biased against the actual issue when at the point when all issues are equal and you can actually use rational logic to determine which one needs more help as opposed to the other. Finally, they get worse advocacy on their side of the house when they craft absolute extreme stereotypes of Africa and individuals being unable to help themselves. When you show people being a package of bones who are weak and can't help themselves, that's when you feel the Western savior complex. That's when you feel paternalistic forms of advocacy, like volunteerism, that don't actually address the issue when everyone just wants to respond to graphic imagery and try to do something in problematic ways. Our side better fixes that when we use rational, empirical ways of fixing charities and using better advocacy means by showing the progress of charities in the long run. We've proven to you that we get more donations and better donations. We're very proud.
When the still, lifeless body of Alan Kurdi washed up in a dinghy on the shore of the Mediterranean, the world was silent. But then, someone took a picture. An aid organization spread it around the world, and he was never forgotten again. Team Canada would have let him and millions more suffer in silence. For Alan Kurdi and for all those children, I've never been prouder to oppose. I'm going to do two things in this speech. Firstly, I'm going to look at why graphic images are a necessity in these campaigns, but secondly, how we help charities on our side of the house. Before that, let's look at what we support on side opposition and some rebuttal for the first two arguments that Canada brought. What do we support? We stand for these images being used by charities when they have them. That looks like things like TV campaigns, it looks like using them in leafleting or on billboards. We would concede that some people in the West might be made slightly uncomfortable by these images. We think that's a good thing. We're perfectly happy to concede that that's the case. Okay, on to rebuttal. So the first thing they tell us in their statement is that we think we support a world where you use statistics to appeal to government organisations or whatever. No, we don't have to only support graphic images on our side of the house. That means, first of all, crucially, that Team Canada's mechanisms are also things we can have on the world of side opposition. So if it is the case that stats are an effective way to convince think tanks or whoever else to get money to us, then we're perfectly happy to use that. But crucially, they can't use graphic images while we can. Let's also, okay, look at this idea of disgust. And they say, look, you're more likely to look away when you see these graphic images. Let's note we think you're much more likely to do this when you see things like stats or words on a page. Because let's be honest, guys, they're quite boring. No one actually cares that much when you see something like 30,000 people without water. When you see a child starving, you're much less likely to be able to look away because there is that thing in the back of your mind that tells you you shouldn't because it's so awful. But then they say, look, guys, you're just going to feel hopeless, like there's nothing you can do. Now, there might be a reason why at the end of these campaigns, charities say things like, if you give £3 a day, you can help this child. It's because there are ways to actually help these children. We're perfectly able to do that on our side. We didn't really get what they were getting at there. But then they say, look, desensitization. We think, first of all, it's just ridiculous to suggest you go into the subway. Every single wall is plastered with images of, starving children. That's just simply not the reality of the situation. But also, I'm going to explain directly in my substantive material why we get more desensitization on that side. And finally on this idea of, the wrong causes. Okay, now, I love toads as well, right? But guys, I'm going to be honest, on the comparative, I think 3 million Yemeni children who are starving to death because of the largest outbreak of cholera in modern history are much more important. We would note that there was a 30% increase in donations to that cause specifically when an advertising campaign used graphic imagery. They told us we only have one example. No, multiple examples. It's called a trend, guys. That is what we support on our side of the house. Finally, to engage on this idea of rationality. Now, let's actually look at what rationality means. What it means is, what type of charity can I donate to that will help me the most, will help me as someone in the West the most? Because I don't really want to give my money to an organisation that doesn't help me. That is what engaging rationally in a charity looks like. When you engage irrationally based on an emotional experience, that is when you're more likely to donate to those starving children that we care about and they were willing to let starve to death. Okay. Why are graphic images a necessity in these campaigns? Firstly, let's note that the situation in the West is often that people simply cannot comprehend suffering. Because then when they're far away in a comfy armchair in middle America, it's very easy for you to not comprehend that this is a reality. It's very easy for you to dismiss it as something that doesn't actually occur. But uniquely, images bring the suffering to the front rooms, to the smartphones, to the letterboxes of those individuals. They make it so much more real to you, you simply cannot dismiss it. You simply cannot pretend that that suffering doesn't exist. But secondly, let's note, images create an active barrier to dismissal. Because most individuals have an active barrier to information about suffering because it's opposed to their lived experience, it's opposed to their general conception of the world as being a good place. It also makes you feel pretty bad when you look at these things and you think that they're really awful. That means that when you bombard people with stats, with generic images, you actively mitigate the types of harm that these things show because you're not trying to actually see that this is something that's awful. You're trying to rationalize the deaths of the 3 million Yemenis from cholera. Note that graphic images are able to actively create a barrier to this type of thing because the images that you paint in your head are not things that you can dismiss as easily as a stat on a page. When you have an image in front of you, it's much harder for you personally or politicians to deny that that suffering exists. It's easier for Trump to deny that people are crossing the border and dismiss it as fake news when you don't see that image. When you see that image on your screen, you can't suggest that that's fabricated. But further here on empathy, note this is a direct response to some of the material from Team Canada. We think in comparison to generic imagery or words, it's a much more visceral reaction when you see an image on a page. When you depict the absolute barbarity of war, the sickening nature of famine, and the truly awful consequences of natural disasters, you force individuals to enter the shoes of those that are suffering directly as a result of those consequences. We would note that even in Team Canada's best case scenario, where they use generic imageries, you still do not fully appreciate the types of suffering these people undergo. Because when you're in those shoes, you still can't appreciate, to the same extent, the truly awful situation these people are undergoing. Finally here on difference, note we think that for every person that is trapped in the rubble or lying in a hospital bed is different on our side of the house. But on their side, when they have stats and words who have repetitive phrases used like malnutrition, we think you should ask yourself, panel, is a child with their ribcage showing easier to dismiss than a word on a page that you've seen time and time before? That is what you get desensitization on their side of the house. When you're able to see these words over and over again, you're able to dismiss them. No, because imageries are unique, each graphic image is crucially unique on our side of the house, you can't simply suggest that we desensitize from them because that's simply not true. Okay, let's look secondly at how we help charities, and for that I'll take it.
Even if a problem seems slightly more urgent on your side of the house, why does that matter if the response of people is to feel hopeless in solving those problems because there's nothing I can do to solve with such horrible brutality?
I already responded to the hopeless of argument, Jesus. Okay, secondly, on how we help charities. Note that those who give money in Team Canada's Guild also crucially give money on our side of the house. Because if you're motivated by stats or logical reasoning, presumably you're also motivated by graphic images, and note we can also have stats on our side of the house. Crucially, this debate is about those in between, those who are often ignorant or inert due to things like selfishness on both sides of the house. Why do we change that, crucially, on opposition? Firstly, because these images are harrowing. You feel guilt for allowing this to happen and for not attempting to do something about it. And this is in a way that is not caused when you see a stat about 30,000 people with food. You want to relieve these individuals of this burden that they have in order to feel guilty. And as a result, we think they're more likely to donate on our side of the house as a way to wash themselves of that guilt. But secondly, and crucially here, you understand urgency. We think it's closer, it feels more proximate when you see this in your front room as opposed to simply reading words. We think that you spur action and you also spur quickness, which you know, in cases like a natural disaster in somewhere like Nepal, quickness is important because the speed at which you can get aid to people means those people do not starve, it means those people are saved from the rubble. On our side of the house, we no longer silence all of those people suffering across the world. And because we don't do that, we are so, so proud to oppose.
This is symmetrical. You don't see it like it's all gone. Yeah, people can do their own whatever. But it's not. Wherefore? I just want to see what people are saying. Okay, yeah, go on a group chat. Thank you.
After first thought, what Team England has given you is one big argument on donations that responded to exactly half of our hits. What I'm going to point out right now is that the counterfaction that we laid out was not that we bombard every individual who walks on the subway with hard stats and numbers. It was that individual charities tailor what they want to their audience. We said right from first that the most likely counterfactual in the town also involves images, just not graphic images. It involves showing images of your successes, of the villages that you've helped build, of the schools that you've helped build. It means showing stats about those schools, sure, but Team England at first opted not to engage with that significant part of our case which will lose them this debate. Two questions I want to ask in refutation. First, what is the effect of these advertisements on donations? And then second, taking England at their best when assuming donations are massive, what is the effect of those donations on the allocation of resources by charities? Let's first engage with donations. The first thing I want to discuss is the idea that we get out of England that we can have both. that we can simultaneously use graphic images in conjunction with stats and in conjunction with images and success. Two things here. First, this is a debate about what resources you should prioritize. Charities have a limited amount of ad space. They have to go for the ads that they find most useful. But what we suggest to you also is that charities have a bias towards using graphic images. Number of reasons. First, they're really easy to implement and really easy to put out. They allow you to put out a quick campaign, plastered along ads across the city. They get you lots of quick one-time donations very quickly. The alternative is to build out a long-term approach to charities, which we suggest that they only get the time, the ability to do, and the foresight to do on our side of the house. Number of other things that we hear out of Paul. They completely strawman our claim on being made on when they say, oh, Prop cares that Western individuals are made to feel uncomfortable. We don't care about the souls of Western individuals who are made to feel uncomfortable. We care that they won't donate if they're made to feel uncomfortable. They did not respond to that half of the argument. But furthermore, they don't give us a sufficient response on desensitization at all. They say clearly we're not going to put them across every subway car. But again, this is a straw man of the argument. The point is that when every day you read in the newspaper and you see these ads plastered across the front page, when you see these even twice a week, that normalizes the idea to you that these ads are inherent to society, that it is inherent to your life, that you will see these ads every single day, that these will be demanded of you, and that you will say no. And that every time you say no to one of these graphic ads, you've created a mental pathway for yourself. That means that mentally you can just skirt around the idea of donation by saying, I didn't do it last time, this is part of the fabric of my society, and I'm just going to let it go. But then they say, look, it is much worse when you become desensitized to statistics. That happens a lot easier. Our claim is this, though. What do you care more about being desensitized to? Numbers or living, breathing human individuals? If the claim out of England is that you become desensitized to statistics, we suggest to you that it's significantly worse to become desensitized to images of starving children. Again, they don't engage with that comparative. Then they say that, look, you cannot comprehend some of these things, and Alan Kurdi led a significant amount of donations. This is the best example for all, so we're going to engage with it right now. First of all, our alternative to showing the image of Alan Kurdi washed up on the shore is not to silence Alan Kurdi. It is to show images of refugees safely integrated into countries that have now accepted those refugees. It is to show images of refugees that have received first aid packages because charities have been successful. This alternative creates more accountability for charities. We're now forced to actually implement the policies they want rather than spend money on administrative costs. But it also ensures that the images are largely positive. The mental association now is if I give money, one more of these first aid kits goes to one of those refugees. It was very unclear what was so inherent about these images that we couldn't get the benefits of donations on our side of the house, particularly because Team England opted to ignore that part of our case, which is hugely important. Then they say, look, you can't say an image is We'd say the fact that Donald Trump was able to look at the picture of his presidential inauguration and had 3 times the amount of Obama says that at our age you have deep fakes and you can definitely say that images are fake. But more importantly, this is super low impact in the round. On both sides, extremists are going to deny that people are starving if that's really their case. That is not particularly relevant to the vast majority of individuals who are going to be donating. Then they say that images are unique. Each time you're exposed to something different. One, this is simply not true. Charities want to cut costs, and because to raise more money for starving children, and because of that, they reuse the same campaigns. They reuse the same general idea of someone who isn't suffering. But also, that's not imperative. If they think that uniqueness is the factor, we can have unique stats if that's their fault. We can have unique images that show the uniqueness of donations that are being brought in, the first aid kits versus developmental aid. We can get that on our side of the house as well. Then, I want to talk briefly about the effects on the allocation of resources in society. Team England did not refute this claim at all at first off, and it is extremely important in the record. What Angela told you is that the model of charities that this kind of advertising encourages is extremely short-termist. That when your charity is based off of $5 text donations, where you walk in the subway and it says, text this number to donate $5 because there's an image of a starving child, that is extremely unsustainable for a charity. Because it means that each individual donor you get is unique. You don't do that 5 times, you do that once to several different charities. The effect of this is twofold. First, charities focus less on long-term individuals, on getting you to subscribe and donate multiple times per year. A number of impacts this that Angela highlights. First of all, there's less accountability because your donors are less consistent. You have no incentive to care about a charity's practices if you donate $5 once. But if you donate $100 a year, $5,000 a year, you definitely do. That's how we get effective altruism on our
If these images are so harmful to the cause, why do charities use them under the status quo?
because they're quick, easy to do, easy to implement, and for some charities, getting $5 donations is all that they want in this circumstance. We prove to you that a long-term outlook is only possible on our side of the house. But furthermore, we suggest to you that this is just a bias that charities have, given that this has been in progress for the last 40 or 30 years, and there's an inertia bias in a situation like that. Third argument about human dignity, which is incredibly important. This will deal directly with the kinds of images that we get out of side opposition. So a number of things. First, charities have ethical obligations to the people that they serve. This is obvious in the round, probably, but what I want to make very clear is that this round is a question of where those ethical obligations lie. It's okay to exploit a starving child who can't consent to that image in order to gain a small utile benefit from that photo. We say absolutely not. It is not right for charities who have ethical obligations to break their moral principles. A number of reasons why consent is often impossible in these images. One, regulation is often very limited in the poor countries which these charities operate in. This means that there's very little accountability in terms of getting consent for images and consent to operate. Second, there's a language barrier, power dynamics, and guilt and duress onto individuals who are hosted in these photos. But furthermore, we suggest to you that an individual cannot consent to a negative portrayal of their entire community. That if these images are used to provoke an image of the developing world and Western mind that is incredibly stereotyped and incredibly inaccurate, that no individual can consent to bring that upon their community, allowing for volunteerism in the white savior complex that opposition enables. So what occurs? The degradation of human dignity, the idea that one starving child is interchangeable for another starving child, is what fuels complacency and disillusionment from charities. It is what fuels the stigma and the idea that all of these individuals don't matter because you see them on advertisements every day. That it's one poor child for another, interchangeable forever. That kind of stripping of human dignity for these advertisements is something that we believe charities have an ethical obligation to avoid. That it goes beyond getting additional first aid kit and it's the way that charities act. We would say that charities, for example, even if they could bring massive utile benefit to society, should not evade taxes, for example. That they shouldn't work their, so for example, they shouldn't work their employees desperately hard just because that will bring additional dollars to other individuals, as we do have in some circumstances. The ethical obligations that these charities possess mean that they have a unique requirement for consent in these cases. Because Team England opted to respond to the case that they thought we'd run, and not our case, we're so proud to oppose.
much easier to replace one starving child for another when they're literally just replaced in the statistics. When it's literally just a number and you're one of 30,000, it's much harder to distinguish you rather than when we see photos of different people and we're able to identify them as each individual people experiencing this suffering. But ultimately, we think on the way up of this principle, it's more important, given the beneficiaries of these charities tend to be the people with the photos being taken on. We think their right to food, their right to a life, the right to be not shot at, the right to go to school is far more important than the right to not be shown on a newspaper photo on the other side of the world. That was never going to win Canada this debate. Secondly, my partner tells you why we specifically need graphic images in order to get these donations. Because people struggle to understand suffering when it's written down. Because images are harder to deny and it stops you putting up an active barrier. Because images trigger empathy due to the visceral reaction. And because it stops a desensitization to the words malnourished, to the words death. We tell you that the people who now donate are the people in between. Not the people who give the recurring donations they want to talk about, because people who give a donation every month probably give it on either side of the house. Rather than people who would never donate on their side because they can't be bothered to care and they have no reason to. What do we hear in response? We hear it's easy to judge things on either side because again, extremists exist. Look, we don't think it's just extremists we're talking about. We think people don't want to give money, and so when they don't have to actually respond to and feel an emotional connection to words, it's really easy just to say, oh, that's not true. But secondly, we see regardless, it's really much, much harder to deny images. For example, Trump's been going on and on about how the news about border control is fake news. But the second a photo comes out, suddenly people are like, this is a genuine problem. People are dying on their borders. Then we hear you can have unique other things. Images aren't the only things that are different. We think that the only things when you look at it and you feel a completely different reaction. You can have a different stat of the number of people dead, but ultimately you have the same reaction. When it's a different human, it matters more. Yes.
Our case is not just about numbers, facts, and cold logic. Our case is about creating positive, feel-good emotions when you feel like you're creating progress for these charities. How do your side address that?
Okay, I'm getting onto that now, but two responses. Firstly, if it's true that these don't work, why on earth do charities use them? Sure, there might be a norm, but we think that norm is developed from the fact they're really effective. And if charities want to get money, they're probably prioritizing the most useful mechanism, which is why they show those photos. Secondly, we think the idea of positivity is absolutely bizarre. If you say, oh look, 100,000 people are now able to go to school, then you're able to react by saying, oh, I don't need to help those people. They've already been helped. Rather, when you see suffering, you're like, I need to intervene to help them. Showing positivity doesn't show a need, doesn't make people feel guilty. It makes it easier for there to be a problem-solved mentality. So what do we hear on why we don't get donations? We hear this idea that you get an immense disgust which causes people to look away. We don't think this is true. We think when you have this feeling of immense disgust, you feel guilty, you feel, by their words, uncomfortable. And the way to satisfy that discomfort, the way to satisfy that guilt, is by donating money to feel like you've done your part. Sure, we might be playing on your emotions, but we think we're doing it in an effective way that means people want to stop being uncomfortable, so they give money. Secondly, we hear this idea of desensitization. This is kind of inconsistent to what they tell you about immense disgust and revulsion. But we think in comparison to words, where you have no visceral reaction, and where there's actually no real inherent value to that word in itself, it's much easier to become desensitized to the words malnourished, to the words famine, rather than seeing images that do differ every single day. Thirdly, we hear this idea that people can't emphasize as images tend to, people can't emphasize as images representing a widely different world if they're graphic, so you don't feel connected to that person. We think it's much more easy to empathize with someone when you share common humanity, where you're able to look at that child's eyes and say, you're also a person. You look like my child, therefore I want to help you. Compared to words, when it feels like even more of another world away, because you can't see it. Second idea you get from their side is this worse allocation of funding. What do they say? A, that quick donations are better than, are harmful, more harmful than recurring donations. Look, the recurring donations on either side is about the people in the middle who won't donate or recurringly on your side. But secondly, we do think quick donations are good. After the Haiti earthquake, they needed a load of fighters in there right now. It wasn't going to be helpful if they got that money in 5 years' time, because people were going to suffer for 5 years. In cases such as war, in cases such as disaster, quick is urgent. Quick is what we need. You never explain what's bad. Secondly, we hear this idea that people focus on the wrong issues as FGM charities cannot access themselves when they can't decide whether or not people care. We tell you the people who would otherwise never donate finally donate. Quickly, why charities act as an accountability mechanism. Often in these areas of the country, journalists either don't care so they don't turn up, or they're expelled from the country because the governments don't want them to be there. Look at Yemen. Rather, these governments let charities in because they know charities are going to be beneficial and help these countries, and they know there's a stigma to denying aid. Therefore, charities are the only people able to access these countries. So charities sharing these images is the only way to get information out of these nations. And once that information is spread, you get accountability mechanisms to these governments, where now other governments are pressurized to take political action. You get symbolic barriers to the denial that currently happens under the status quo. You get photos such as Alan Kurdi that represent the refugee crisis, where on their side they would never have the spreading of the information. You get photos of starving children where journalists are unable to go and unable to help. But even if the impact isn't astronomical, as far as these charities are the only possible route for any accountability, it's really important they help. This isn't about the people who donate every month to the Toad Foundation. It's about the people in the middle who don't donate on their side and need to empathise and help.
Dictators don't let charities come in after taking all these photos. It's not black journalists. We need to push that certain images. Push that for the people who don't donate. It's about sexy issues. And for the people in the middle, we need to show exclusivity. That's what I mean.
Thank you very much, and welcome to the first speaker from the I'm going to be talking about 3 issues in this speech. Firstly, under which side we get more donations in support to charity. Secondly, about which side gets better allocation of funds. Because even if they get marginally more donations, and if they successfully proven that poor people who are swayed by empathy, they are vastly distorting the priorities of charities. And then finally, even if we buy the best case scenario, this is not worth instrumentalizing innocent people. On the first question about which side gets more donations in support, the main claim and phrase that we get coming from Team England is that a sense of urgency is vital, and people are going to be unable to identify the severity of a problem unless they're able to see things like grotesque imagery. I have a couple of responses to this. The first thing to say is that we can still get acknowledgement of problems and other ways that people are able to rationally comprehend that things are bad under our side of the house. We are able to do this in a variety of ways. Firstly, when you see things like a statistic about how millions of women are being abused, that can resonate with people, we can get things like educational campaigns in the public and being launched in schools under our side of the house. But furthermore, even when you see a video of a solution, something like Tabitha is going to school, that still inherently says there is a problem under the status quo, you can see the pathway of what that problem was, what her life was like, and how it is solved under our side of the house. But furthermore, we said that people are a lot more likely to actually feel things like urgency when their initial response is rational, and they actually do things like research the charity after the fact. When you're not turned away or you donate impulsively, that's when you actually read up about these kinds of problems, which is when you're inclined to actually believe these kinds of things are serious at the end of the day. However, as I flagged in the POI, even if you believe that slightly more people buy into the fact that these things are urgent, we see that does not matter if they ultimately get less donations. And here I want to get into the second part of the theme, which is about the conflicting characterization about whether people are going to feel empathy and donate or no thank you, or about whether people are going to feel tremendous disgust, look away, and not donate. I want to give multiple ways to actually break the deadlock in this family mechanism. The first thing to say that we preempted from first is that disgust is more likely because it is a lot more aligned with the kind of things that we already think are disgusting, things like blood and gore. We heard a couple responses to this. Firstly, they try to say that it is good if people feel disgust. However, it is not good if people look away or they actually look at the photo enough to comprehend what is actually happening. We characterize that their side of the house floods your brain with a variety of negative emotions because you believe that this is terrible, and as a defense mechanism, we want to do things like look away. This is precisely why the response from second about how now people are going to feel guilt also does not stand, because guilt is only an emotion that can actually emerge when you're comprehending and considering the problem for an extended period of time. We say when an emotion is unpleasant, to protect yourself, the most rational thing for an individual is to not consider these kinds of things whatsoever. You're not going to think about these things. Contrast that to our side, where if you believe that Tabitha can go to school, that's when you feel a positive emotion and are actually more likely to feel empowered to thing though that we were able to say is that empathy in their best case scenario is short term because people are likely to become desensitized to these kinds of information thinking. The response we heard from second is that people can also be desensitized to words as well. However, it is far, far worse for images, number one, because you're going to be desensitized to the most severe thing that they want to actually solve on your side of the house. Secondly, rationality can get checked against desensitization because if you buy into the fact that something is actually a problem, you'll be less likely to disregard that when you're exposed to images for an extended period of time. But thirdly, we are less likely to experience desensitization because we can use a larger arsenal of things to engage in advertising under our side of the house. It's not just a statistic, it's also things like showing positive impacts to actions. They try to say that they can also do that under their side of the house because they can get images and a variety of other things. However, that is unlikely to be the case for a few reasons. Number one, because we don't think that charities themselves are always the most rational actor. We often believe in second as we characterize. This is a way that we can get quick money, especially because as we frame, a lot of these charities are ultimately corrupt. But secondly, for the kind of individuals who are swayed by empathetic messaging, no thank you, that they want to talk about, when you see a photo first, we're less likely to consider the kind of positive means of messaging that we say are so important under our side of the house. So even if you buy the people in the interim, charities have changed for York, that does not matter if in the long term they stagnate the ability of charities to actually get these kinds of donations. The final thing though that we were able to say is that the donors that we get under our side of the house are far, far more valuable, no thank you, because they get things like short term, quick sums of cash under their side of the house. They try to say people do things like give money every single month, which number one, doesn't hold up to our characterization of how people get desensitized, but number two, people often get complacent under their side of the house, that if you get money once, which is often the funding model that these charities set up, you aren't going to keep giving money into the long term because you feel like you've done your part. So crucially, we provide the method for this debate of human second is money, you're better for that. Go ahead.
What is easier to scroll past on your phone? Text and statistics or a photo of a starving child?
Okay, so firstly, please stop strawmanning your case about text and statistics. We've also supported other things like photos that were not as graphic, things like showing positive impacts. But secondly, we prove that people will scroll through that photo if your emotion is disgust rather than empathy. On the second theme then, about what our side of the house is actually better for charities, and we get a better allocation of funds, which will outweigh their best case scenario of more donations. On charities, we try to claim in second that this is the only way to actually get vital kinds of information out, and therefore they are better. A couple responses for this. Firstly, the worst kinds of governments, like China, are going to ban charities going into their country under either side of the house, so a lack of information is probably symmetric to these NGOs stretching their power. But secondly, we can also get information out in other ways through things like investigative journalism and reporting under our side of the house, or once again, photos that are not incredibly graphic in nature. We were able to prove, though, that we vitally get the better allocation of funds under our side of the house. Firstly, we explain this because you get far less impulsive donation. So their mechanism of urgency firmly implies a level of irrationality because it taps into the incredibly emotional parts of our brain. We explain why this is problematic because you got a lot more donations to bad and corrupt charities. Even if you do not buy any of the way that I gave previously about why we get more donations, you massively stagnate donations when people see that the Veterans Affairs organization people have been donating to is massively corrupt. Then you do not believe that charities are actually important and valuable, which will also have a massive chilling effect on the kind of donations that you get. Secondly, though, we explained why you massively elevated certain causes over others, which is problematic. For a second, tried to claim that this was connected, but that missed the heart of the argument, which was that some kinds of things conform a lot more to societally what is more palatable to show as an image. People resonate a lot with PETA and animals, but people do not buy into the fact that menstrual products, which we're unable to show, is as important. So even if they get more donations, they get donations to the wrong kinds of charities, part that we're not willing to bite. But finally here, they were unresponsive to our claim about the white savior complex. So their mechanism for urgency in order to be effective has to show people living in absolute dilapidated poverty in order to work. This says that people are powerless to change their own conditions. It says that applicants are worthless, they're not able to do anything. And that is precisely what fuels a kind of patronizing charity, like volunteerism, that is counterproductive. But as we explained in second, it is also what leads to things like actually bring these kinds of
Charity's argument when she told you her only response was this has no impact in states where they're already on charities. Yes, this is true, but it does have impact in states where the kinds of investigative journalists who she characterizes as the mechanisms by which they accountability are not allowed in. It was an insufficient response, and this is particularly problematic for them, given it is too late for them to come back in reply. I'm going to look at two questions in this view. Firstly, what is the unique effect of graphic images? Why we value them on our side of the house? And secondly, on which side of the house we get better models of charitable donation? Firstly, I just want to deal with this kind of quasi-principle that they try to sneak out in the last minute of their second speech, on it being unethical to use an image of a non-consenting child. So we are intensely apologetic, Team Canada, that we didn't manage to get the photo release form to the child who wanted their suffering broadcast to the world, so that the food that they were being denied, the war that took place in their areas, could be mitigated by charities. We think because they never engaged that way up, it was utterly inadequate for them to characterize this. But we'd also point out that given these children are often the beneficiaries of these charities, given these children are often being actively interviewed, asking for things like food, they completely fail to understand the charitable models people rely on. But, far more importantly, to quote their second speaker, they are also using non-graphic images, presumably of non-consenting children also. We think that this was a completely inadequate response, and to try to lean on it in third only shows the level of pressure they've been put under. They told us that there are limits to what charities can do for money. Yes, this assertion is indeed correct. Unfortunately, your team did not prove why the use of graphic images was one of these things. Given the only example they gave us was one of tax evasion, note that in the status quo in most countries, tax breaks are consistently applied to charities in order to maximize their ability to access donations. Let's look at this first question, though, of why graphic images are unique in producing a positive effect on potential donors. We told you three broad things. Firstly, that there is a unique empathy and common humanity that people experience through the medium of images. Secondly, that these images have the capacity to disrupt set phrases within discourse that desensitize people and shut them out of dialogue. And thirdly, that it is difficult for an individual to internally dismiss something once they process it as an image. What did Team Canada tell us? No, thank you. They said we're the team of statistics and logic. Ironic, given they didn't listen to either of ours. A 40% increase in donations for Haiti after the earthquake when graphic images were used. A 30% increase in donations to Yemen after graphic images were used. We'd love a response, but reply is probably a little bit late. But note they never gave us any reason why these mechanisms were exclusive with what we were able to offer, which was a combination on our side of the house, other than to tell us there's limited ad space. I'm going to characterize for you that charities can potentially use TV ad campaigns to show graphic images and then newsletters to regular donors to show statistics. No explanation as to why this is mutually exclusive. But then they told us charities are likely to use statistics because they can tailor them to different audiences. Note that there is every incentive for charities to do this under the status quo. When they are trying to appeal to a broad audience who wouldn't ordinarily donate, they're likely to use things like graphic images to shock them into action. When speaking to their set base, they're likely to use things like logic and statistics that individuals with pre-existing knowledge on those issues can access. But then they told us we want to focus on the success of charities. Note that the consequence of this, and this is something they never responded to from Liberty speech, is a problem-solved mentality for potential donors. Because when charities constantly reiterate the success of their programs, the perception is that less money is needed, less funding is needed, and less investment is important. But then they told us people react with disgust to these images. Yes, they react with disgust at themselves. They react with disgust at the regimes that have allowed them to have them. We think that the importance of guilt as a mechanism and the importance of understanding the terribleness of these things was utterly understated by Team Canada when they told us blood and guts just have that kind of gross factor. Maybe on the Nickelodeon channel they do, but not when you see them in relation to a child who is actively suffering. We think that necessarily creates an impetus for empathy in individuals. No thank you. But then they say people feel unsettled, therefore they turn off. Note that if this was true, charities would not currently be using these images. It is precisely because of the positive feedback cycle of these ad campaigns resulting in a greater proportion of donations that means charities continue to do this. But we also just think it is generally true that people are drawn in by extremes. And in fact, we're able to co-opt a lot of the benefits that Team Canada offers you. When after first seeing a graphic image, you subsequently maybe look up that charity, gain access to those statistics, appreciate that logic and rationality that these individuals would otherwise never have had. But then they say there's desensitization on our side of the house. Note how uncomparative this is when they're also presumably relying on things like stock images, stock phrases. They tell us rationality is a check. Sorry, you can't fiat in that everyone watching your ads will be able to process them at like vast speed with huge understanding of international affairs. But we think that this was a complete mischaracterization of the kind of images that are actually shown. Because much as they'd like to tell you otherwise, suffering is not homogeneous. People suffer in different ways, and we think there's no way that you would be desensitized to the full spectrum of that on their side of the house. Then they tell us there's a feeling of hopelessness when you're bombarded with images. I'm generally unsure what their alternative is, unless they're planning to downplay the severity of statistics in order to give people a feeling of hopefulness and a feeling that they can change the world. Utterly inadequate from Team Canada. Then they tell us success narratives encourage donation. Once again, no response to the problem solved mentality. But that's because of very limited engagement with the mechanisms we brought you. Because they said broadly three things. Firstly, they told us extremists will dismiss images either way. Yes, they utterly missed the comparison in this debate. This is not about bringing extreme individuals into the fold. Rather, it's about ordinary people whose comfortable lifestyles create a psychological block that disables them from understanding what true suffering is like. They tell us charities reuse images. Again, charities don't have an incentive to do things that will actively undermine their ability to garner donations. Until they engage with this characterization, they are losing this debate. And then finally, most extraordinarily of all, they tell us they can bring back unique statistics. I genuinely have no idea what this means. Like, what are you going to do? Switch up the font size? Okay, let's look at this second question of on which side of the house do charities garner more effective donations and are therefore more effective. But first, I'll take the point.
After the Haiti earthquake, why could we have not gotten 80% more donations if we actually showed infrastructure being built to create a positive emotion from photos, not a statistic as you tried to strong? Okay, because in order to create the impetus for that positive change to happen, you have to show people that there's a problem in the first place in a visceral way. See the last 6 minutes of my speech. Okay, let's look at how charities do garner more effective donations, because they tell us there's an unsustainable model on our side of the house. Note that what we support is a combination of kind of long-term donors who exist, who read the newsletter on either side of the house. This is uncomparative in this way. Rather, this is about instances where charities use shocking images, either for, as Liberty told you, short-term crises like Haiti, where there was an earthquake or natural disaster, or to get money in the short term from donors who otherwise wouldn't be involved. We think that this would be utterly uncomparative. But let's look at what they tried to hang their hat on as well. It's broadly two things. The idea that we get donations to the wrong kinds of charities, and because of an emotional response. Note that we think that charities compete either way, besides propositions, unique statistics. But also we point out that we think the emotional response and the viscerality of images is a good metric for whether or not people should donate. Something that they illustrate when their only example is codes losing out. They move to disgust at FGM later. But note that we think that disgust exists on either side of the house when it's grounded in misogyny. And actually we do think women care about these issues. We do think individuals move. Finally, on creating stereotypes that impoverish the health of white saviors. Do they genuinely think that they are the side that ends the white savior complex when they tell you that you helped build Tabitha, her school? Incredibly proud to
In today's debate, side proposition had a rather bizarre idea of where charities can most help. They decided that charities never need to help in urgent cases. The people in Nepal should have stayed trapped in the rubble caused by the earthquakes for a few more years. Proposition lost this debate when they conceded that the number of $5 donations goes up in the short term, because this is and has always been where charities are most needed. When the situation is where without those $5 donations from people who would never donate on their side anyway, millions more would die. That was the comparative that they missed, and that's why they missed it. Two questions. Firstly, are graphic images necessary to achieve the increase in donations? Secondly, what is the impact of donations in terms of where they go? On the first question, what did we tell you? We told you that graphic images were necessary in 4 ways. Firstly, on helping people to comprehend suffering. Secondly, that they create create a barrier against dismissal, thirdly on empathy, and finally on the idea of distinction, particularly in order to try and increase this like middle group who we think are inert and not really paying attention on their side of the camp. What were their responses? They said, look guys, people will feel disgusted, they'll look away from these images. We told you that first of all, if this were true, charities would never do this in the status quo. They had no response. We also told you that it's much easier to dismiss something like a stat. When you see it on your screen, you can simply scroll away. When you see an image that might disgust you, yeah, that's not a nice feeling, but you still get drawn to it, you still look at it. But then we said, look, you can have both on our side, which is really crucial because we also get their world when they wanted things like non-graphic images, they wanted things like stats. They said, look guys, we simply haven't got enough resources to do this. But they also said in their first speech that we can change what type of things we use depending on which audience we're going to appeal to. They solved their own problem. We're really thankful to Team Canada for doing that. What did they do? They said, look, people get desensitized. We told you that that's much more likely on their side of the house when you see these constant repetition of words like malnourished, when you see images of unique individual children, you do not feel that same effect. Secondly, they said, oh guys, they'll just be irrational, they won't make logical decisions. Look, we told you that logical decisions lead to you picking your local wildlife charity over people in Yemen because you think, maybe that might help me in the future. We told you that irrationality and emotion was crucial in this. Great, but finally they said, guys, just be more positive, showcase to the people building infrastructure. We told you that was stupid. The way to encourage people to donate to charities, the way to tell people that this is urgent, is not to show the problem being fixed, it's to show people that the problem exists. They never had a response to that. They lost this debate. But then they said, look guys, it harms the dignity of these people we care so much about. No, they care so much about them, they spent all of 20 seconds on it in their third speech. We told you that these people are desperate to have the stories told, that they beckon the cameras to them. We told you that they're also using these images, and that on the comparative, we'd rather give these children food. Clearly, there was a significant benefit to these images being used in terms of increasing donations, but also on that big majority group who currently feel inert. When we increase exposure, they're much more likely to donate. That was the group we cared about in this debate. They were never able to show you why we didn't get it. But secondly, on the impact of these donations. What have we said? We told you firstly, there was a greater number of donations, and that was the most important thing, given that charities are extremely important in alleviating suffering. But secondly, we told you about the speed of donations. They never really responded to this idea of urgent aid for cases like Nepal. Apart from saying, look guys, we need long-term donations too. We told you it's probably governments that do things like do long-term development. What did they say? They said, guys, we're going this money to the wrong charities. We should be prioritising charities that help toads. We told you that was ridiculous, that starving children was so much more important. They actually agreed with us on that, so they ended up dropping it after their first speech. But then they said, look guys, it's about prioritising the types of places where we can be most effective. We told you the people that will donate in the long term do it on either side, but the urgency is the most important thing in this debate. We won an increase in donations. We won on where those donations go. Because of that, we won the debate. For Alan Kurdi and all the children like him, vote opposite.
In a debate about people's emotions and their likely response, it wasn't enough to decide opposition to just rely on examples and strawmanning of their opposing points. There have been lots of claims in this debate about how people respond, whether they'll be donating, whether they won't be. The way to adjudicate this round is which side gave you more structural analysis of which is more likely to occur. Side proposition's case was far nuanced and gave us a greater scope of the types of people in this debate. We talked about why disgust is more likely than empathy, why you can't cases of hopelessness, and we took opposition on their best grounds and said, even if they did respond, that the response was bad and would lead to poor allocation of funding. Contrast that to side opposition's case, which at the end of this debate was incredibly limited, when they conceded that showing the positive outcomes of charities is good and that they want that on their side of the house too. When they conceded that the only benefit that they really get is you get harder to deny some of the worst catastrophic crises like refugee crises. I want to talk about two things then in this speech. First of all, which side gets more donations and which side gets better allocation of those donations. So first of all, who gets more donations? Ops' biggest benefit and central Syrian refugee crises feel more real and urgent for the Western privileged folks sitting in their flesh chair. You make it harder to deny it, and you make them more sympathetic. It was unstrategic that they hung their hat on the worst crises in impact, because it's probably not necessary to see blood and people dying to know that war probably destroys lives, and to know that if the buildings in Haiti fell down, then we needed to do something about it, regardless if we have to see it itself. We said that even on those grounds, that it's not always good to disproportionately blow up those bloody and graphic images. Their analysis was very simplistic. They say that they see bad things, they want to stop those bad things, so they're going to donate. But we gave you a nuanced characterization of the way people work and their emotions work. That the reason why we shut down in times of tragedy and great threats is because we feel overwhelmed. That sometimes we feel disgusted when it's associated with previously disgusting things like mutilated animals. Or that when you show some of the same types of images to capitalize on the worst scenario cases, that you feel hopeless or desensitized. They claim then that they're going to donate because you want to stop the feeling of discomfort and negative feelings. But we told you that it's always easier to stop the discomfort by shutting down and looking away rather than engaging and continuing to expose yourself. That creates less comprehension of the issue and less empathy overall. Opposition's claim is that negative emotions drive donations. But we told you, and they conceded, that it's probably going to be effective if it's actually a feel-good donation, to feel that you're making a difference. No one's going to believe that refugee crisis or massive education problems are solved with one photo, contrast with opposition's claim. It's unrealistic. We think people want to be part of that change, and showing the positive impacts of their donations is far better for making people want to engage in positive feelings. People want to feel good. We capitalize that to get change in our side of the house. So on to the second theme about which get a better allocation of these donations. We took them on their best grounds while they never chose to engage with the scope of analysis we told you. We said those who do respond to these advertisements are driven impulsively, that their good intentions lead to bad outcomes in the end, because it looks like people not caring where the money goes. People, as they characterize, just want to throw money at their problem to make the negative emotions stop. That's incredibly harmful because you prioritize the wrong issues. The ones with the most graphic images win. So issues, not just toads, like female issues of female genitalization and menstrual hygiene, which are not socially accepted, are ignored on their side of the house. The panda, that you're better able to instrumentalize graphic imagery. We told you that you rely on stereotypes and that the package of bones presented in images and lack of ability to get diversity when you have to rely on the worst case scenarios to get the best response is in and of itself harmful and principally and morally unjustified. We told you that the people who do care about issues on both sides of the house are an important actor, but we're better able to use their empathy on our side of the house when they choose charities on the basis of which have the better impact and which is more accountable with their funds. So even on their best grounds, with the narrow people who do positively respond to ads, we get them better on our side. We get better charities, better allocation of funds. We don't instrumentalize people's own suffering in the long run. We're very proud of that.